In the quiet hollow of a family home, long fractured by words never spoken, Mara Cole carried the weight of decades-old secrets, like a shadow she couldn't outrun. Her brother Leo, ever the silent guardian of their shared pain, hovered on the edge of reconciliation, while old wounds festered beneath the surface of everyday routines. Tonight, with the house holding its breath, she reached for a way to shatter the silence that had defined them all, her hand trembling as she faced the relics of their past in the dim glow of the kitchen light hung low. A single bulb casting long shadows across the linoleum, where crumbs from last night's dinner still clung like forgotten accusations. Mara sat at the scarred wooden table, her fingers tracing the edge of the old tape recorder, a relic from their parents' attic, its cassette deck dulled by years of dust, the play button sticky under her thumb. She pressed record, the machine whirring to life with a faint, muffled hum, like a breath held too long underwater. Silence stretched, thick and unyielding, the kind that had armored her for decades. "I guess this is where it starts," she murmured into the mic. Her voice, flat at first, detached as the steam from her cooling coffee curling upward. The words felt distant, like echoes from someone else's life. Outside the window, the suburban dusk pressed in, houses identical and hushed, promising normalcy if you just kept quiet. But the quiet had become her shield. Against the blowout fight when they were kids, Leo's reckless words shattering their world, leaving her to patch the pieces alone. She'd swallowed it all, told herself it kept the family intact, the fragile thread between them unsnapped. Now, with him in the next room, rifling through cabinets for a snack, the shield cracked. Leo's footsteps shuffled closer, pausing at the doorway. He didn't look up, just grabbed a glass from the drying rack, filled it with water from the sink. Broad shoulders, same stoic slump as always, a ghost in his own home. Mara froze, her heart thudding against the recorder's case. She wanted to call out, bridge the gap with some banal chat about the weather, but the forbidden warmth died in her throat. No more pretending, no false ease to paper over the rift. Instead, she leaned in, voice gaining a tremor, words spilling faster now, laced with the raw edge of buried hurt. "It wasn't just the fight, Leo. It was how you left me to carry it. The silence after. It wrapped around me like chains. I thought if I stayed quiet, we'd be okay. But it's eating us alive." The tape hissed softly, capturing the hitch in her breath, the way her hands clenched, knuckles whitening. Trepidation bloomed in her chest, sharp and insistent, as if the machine itself were judging her. What if he found this, stumbled on the cassette tomorrow, played it back in this same dim light? Would the truth shatter the last pretense, leave them in ruins? Leo lingered a moment longer, oblivious, then turned away, his shadow retreating down the hall. The door clicked shut somewhere distant, but the tension coiled tighter in the air, unspoken and electric. Mara stopped the recorder, the click echoing like a held breath released. How would she face the moment it all unraveled? The next morning, in the same kitchen, the light filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting muted stripes across the oak table where Mara and Leo sit. Steam rises from their coffee mugs like unspoken ghosts, the air thick with the scent of burnt toast and years unaddressed. Mara pours cream into her cup, the slow swirl mirroring the churn inside her. Decades of restraint, bottled tight, now fizzing at the edges. "Pass the sugar?" Leo asks, his voice flat, eyes on his phone. He doesn't look up, but his fingers drum the table's edge, a rhythm she's come to dread. She slides the bowl over, their hands brushing the wood without touching. Sure, the word hangs, polite as wallpaper, but her pulse quickens beneath it. Inside, her thoughts unravel. How many mornings like this? Smiling through the grit, pretending the fracture never happened. But it's cracking now, isn't it? The silence isn't holding. Leo sips, nods at nothing. Weather's turning. Small talk, their armor. He shifts in his chair. The scrape, loud in the hush. And Mara feels the distance yawn wider. Him across the table. Her adrift in the numbness that's kept her safe. Or so she thought. Her gaze drifts to the counter, where the old tape recorder sits. Its dusty cassette half rewound. A relic from her therapy sessions with Ivy. She hasn't touched it since last week, when her voice cracked into the mic. He took it all, and I let him, because saying it would shatter us. The tape's muddy whir echoes in her mind, a faint tremor pulling her from detachment. Her hand itches toward it now, heart stuttering. What if she hit play, invited him to hear the raw edges she's hidden? The thought lodges like a thorn, fear twisting into something sharper, a trepidation that makes her breath shallow. Silence presses, no longer a shield, but a weight, demanding she name the wound before it festers through them both. Leo glances up, finally, his eyes shadowed. You okay? She nods, but the lie tastes bitter. The recorder waits, tape coiled like a secret, ready to uncoil. Will she dare let him listen, see the hurt she's carried alone? The question pulses, unanswered, as the coffee cools between them. Later that afternoon, Mara arrived at the therapy room, which felt like a held breath. Walls in soft beige, a single window filtering gray suburb light, casting long shadows across the worn couch. Mara sat hunched, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, her anxiety a knot in her chest, tight and unyielding. Ivy, across from her in a simple armchair, leaned forward, her eyes steady, not pitying, but insistent, like a hand extended over a chasm. You stopped the recordings, Ivy said, voice low, cutting through the hush. Why? After that first one, where you almost named it, the hurt Leo left festering all these years. Mara's gaze flicked to the table between them, where her small tape recorder lay dormant, its casing dulled by fingerprints and time, a muted relic of confessions half-spoken. She could feel its weight, even untouched, like the grudge it was meant to unravel. It felt too real, she murmured, throat dry, saying it out loud, even to a machine. What if it makes everything worse? Leo and I, we function, you know. Polite nods over coffee, no waves. Silence keeps it that way. Ivy didn't nod sympathetically. Her expression sharpened, mirroring Mara's inner fracture. Function? That's not living, Mara. That's a cage you both built. Your silence isn't protecting him. It's widening the gap, turning years of resentment into a wall he can't see, but you crash against every day. Think about it. That childhood split, the toys broken and forgotten in the attic. Your connection's the same, fractured because no one's named the break. Mara's breath hitched, anxiety spiking, a tremor in her hands. She picked up the recorder, thumb hovering over the button, the device cool against her palm, its tape spool a silent witness to buried screams. Flashes hit her. Young Leo's avoidance after the family blow-up, his guilt-shadowed eyes dodging hers, the unspoken accusation she'd carried like a stone. It's my prison, she admitted, voice cracking, the words tasting like rust. Staying quiet. I thought it kept us safe, but it just locks me in deeper. Ivy's nod was firm, a catalyst. Then break it. Start the tape again. Speak the pain. Name it for yourself first. That's how you reach him. Not with more distance, but with the truth. Silence isn't peace. It's rot. You ready to let it out? The question hung, electric, as Mara's thumb pressed play. The faint whir filled the room, a heartbeat against the quiet. Anxiety ebbed, resolve hardening in her jaw, eyes lifting to meet Ivy's. For the first time, the words felt possible, teetering on her tongue. How ready was she to voice the wound that had shaped her? That evening, back home, the camera lingered on Mara in the dim confessional booth, a makeshift nook in her suburban home. Walls lined with faded family photos, the air thick with dust motes dancing in slanted light. She grips the recorder harder, its plastic casing cool and unyielding, a relic of suppressed screams. Memories flood, unbidden. The slammed door, Leo's retreating shadow, the weight of blame settling like lead in her young bones. Why did you choose them over me? Younger Mara's voice cracks through the speaker, high and unbroken, slicing the air. I waited all night. I called your name until my voice gave out. In the adjacent living room, Leo pauses mid-sip of coffee, his posture stiffening. He doesn't know she's recording, but the muffled audio seeps through the thin wall. A ghost in the machine. His brow furrows. For the first time, he senses the undercurrent, her inner storm breaking free. The tension in the house thickens, unspoken wires humming. Mara leans closer to the mic, her reflection fracturing in the recorder's dark lens. It still aches, she whispers to herself, the adult voice overlapping the child's. Every quiet dinner, every polite nod, it's all built on this. The tape hisses, capturing the tremor in her words, the crack in her silence. Courage flickers, weak but insistent, as the past demands its due. But can she bear it? Listen without shattering the fragile now. Or will the wounds pull her under? The recorder clicks off, leaving only the echo of unanswered hurt. A few days later, in the dim light of the living room, Mara sat cross-legged on the worn rug, the muted tape recorder humming softly between her palms like a fragile heart. Her fingers, steady at first, brushed the edge of the family photo framed in chipped wood, a relic from 2 decades ago, all of them smiling in stiff Sunday best. Mom's arm around Dad, Leo towering awkwardly in the back, and little Mara, gap-toothed and oblivious, squeezed between them. The glass was cool under her touch, smudged with the ghosts of fingerprints long faded. She pressed record, the click echoing in the quiet house. Leo was somewhere upstairs, his footsteps a distant thud, but she could feel his presence like an unspoken accusation. It's all so perfect here, she began, her voice flat, detached, as if narrating someone else's life. This picture, us, the way we posed, like nothing could touch us. But look closer. Her fingertip traced the faint hairline crack spiderwebbing from the corner, where a tear, hers, from last week's quiet breakdown, had dried into a translucent smear. It distorted Leo's face just enough to blur his eyes, turning certainty into something haunted. The detachment held her at first, a numb armor she'd worn for years, convincing herself that silence was the glue holding this illusion together. But as she spoke, the words tugged at the seams. We built this piece on nothing, Leo. On pretending the fights never happened. The words never cut. I stayed quiet because if I said it, her nail dug into the crack, the glass creaking faintly under pressure. A tremor rippled through her hand, spilling into her voice, making it waver. This would shatter, the family we pretend to be. But it's already breaking, isn't it? Every unsaid resentment, every night I lay awake, hating how you looked away when it mattered most. Mom's illness, the way you left me to carry it alone. I thought silence protected us, kept the peace, but it's just letting the fractures grow deeper until there's nothing left to hold. Her breath hitched, the recorder capturing the raw edge now, no longer monotone, but quivering with the weight of it all. The tear on the glass caught the light, refracting it into tiny prisms that danced across her knuckles. Upstairs, a door creaked. Leo, perhaps listening, forced to confront the splintered image without a word. How much truth could this fragile pain endure before it gave way entirely? Mara's hand trembled harder, pressing the photo closer, as if willing the cracks to seal or finally break free. The following evening, Mara retreated to the childhood bedroom, where her fingers trembled as she knelt on the worn carpet, the air thick with dust and unspoken years. The paired toys, two wooden soldiers, once inseparable comrades from their shared playtime, lay before her in a forgotten box, their painted faces chipped and faded. She hesitated, heart pounding like a distant storm, the anxiety coiling in her chest. "Say it," her mind urged, but the words stuck, a familiar retreat into silence that had built this wall between her and Leo. She forced her hands to move, laying the soldiers in neat rows across the floor, side by side at first, their tiny rifles touching. "We were like this," she whispered to the empty room, her voice a fragile thread in the confessional glow of the bedside lamp. Close up on her face, shadows carving hollows under her eyes, lips parting as if tasting the weight of memory. The soldiers represented them, brothers in arms, unbreakable until the fracture. One row for the laughter, the forts built from couch cushions, another for the fights that simmered beneath, never voiced. But then her fingers faltered, pulling the figures apart, inch by inch. The left soldier toppled first, rolling into isolation, its counterpart left, staring across the divide. Anxiety spiked, her breath shallow, palms slick, as the metaphor clawed free. "You see this gap?" she said, louder now, to the tape recorder humming softly nearby, its red light a mute witness. "It's not some accident. We made it. I made it wider every time I swallowed the hurt. Every birthday, I smiled through the grudge." The words burned, not diminishing the ache, but naming it. The betrayal long buried, Leo's choices that shattered their trust, her silence that let resentment fester like rot in the seams. She traced the space between the toys, her touch lingering on the empty floorboards, and the anxiety ebbed into something sharper, a painful awareness blooming in her gut, twisting like exposed roots. Tears blurred the soldier's stares, and she saw it clear. The split wasn't fate, but their own hands. Year after year, choosing quiet over confrontation. Had silence protected them, or just prolonged the wound? The question hung in the dim light, unanswered, as she left the toys divided, the room echoing with the truth she'd finally voiced. The next day, alone in the house while Mara was out, the dim glow of a single lamp pooled on the coffee table, casting long shadows across the living room like unspoken accusations. Leo sat rigid in the worn armchair, his knuckles white against the armrests, the tape recorder squatting between his hands like a relic from their fractured past. Its whir was the only sound breaking the suburban hush, a mechanical heartbeat in the tomb of their shared silence. He hadn't meant to play it. Mara had left it there, cassette labeled in her neat script, "For when you're ready," but curiosity, or guilt, had won. Now her voice spilled out, raw and unfiltered, threading through the air like smoke from a smoldering wound. "I can't keep pretending it didn't happen, Leo." Mara's recorded words trembled, not with anger, but with the weight of years bottled up. "You were there, always the protector, the one who fixed everything. But when it mattered most, when Dad walked out and Mom shattered, you just vanished. Into your books, your silence. I was 12, screaming inside, and you let me drown in it alone. Leo's jaw tightened, a vice of restraint clamping his chest. He stared at the spinning reels, the tape's glossy black surface reflecting fragments of his face, stoic, shadowed, unchanging. This was safer, wasn't it? Listening without responding, acknowledging her pain in the privacy of his own head. No risk of cracking open the fragile shell they'd built around their lives. No chance of the words tumbling out, exposing the guilt that had calcified in his gut since that summer. He'd told himself silence kept them whole, that speaking would only splinter what remained. But her voice pressed on, gaining strength, a confession uncoiling like a vine through cracked concrete. Every family dinner, every holiday photo, you smile for the camera, and I choke on the lie. It's not just anger, Leo. It's the hole you left, the part of me that learned to numb out because reaching for you hurt too much. The words landed like blows, each one chipping at the walls he'd erected. His breath hitched, shallow and confined, as if the room's muted blues and grays were closing in. He shifted, the chair creaking under him, a small betrayal of the storm brewing inside. Flashes came unbidden. Young Mara in the backyard, clutching that split-apart toy truck they'd once shared, her eyes pleading while he buried himself in homework, fleeing the chaos of their parents' unraveling. He'd thought distance was mercy. Now it felt like abandonment. The tape hissed softly, Mara's pause stretching into eternity. I need you to hear this, not to fix it, just to know. Leo's hand hovered over the stop button, trembling. The recorder's hum demanded more than observation. It echoed her resolve, turning her invisible wounds into something tangible, insistent. Silence wasn't protection anymore. It was complicity, a deeper cut. His throat burned with the urge to speak, to shatter the quiet with his own fractured truth. But could he? Would he dare bridge the chasm her voice had laid bare, or let the tape end in the void he'd helped create? The reels slowed, clicking to a halt, leaving only the question pulsing in the air. That same evening, the living room hung heavy with the scent of stale coffee and unspoken years, shadows pooling in the corners like forgotten regrets. Mara stood by the mantel, her fingers trembling around the muted tape recorder, its red light flickering weakly as if gasping for breath. She'd carried it here from her room, the device that had whispered her younger self's hurts into the void. Now it would witness the eruption. Leo, she said, voice cracking like thin ice, anxiety coiling in her chest, a vice squeezing her ribs. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, staring at the faded family photo on the wall, the one with tears smudged on the glass from some long-ago outburst. His stoic mask faltered, eyes lifting to meet hers, but he said nothing. The silence between them, a third presence, thick and accusatory. She couldn't delay any more. The words she'd buried since childhood surged up, raw and insistent. That night, when Dad left, and you promised you'd protect me, you turned away, Leo. You let him scream at me, let the door slam on everything we had. I was 12, and you just walked out. Her breath hitched, the anxiety peaking, a storm in her throat. The younger Mara echoed in her mind, that small voice pleading to be heard, no longer hidden behind numbness. Leo's face crumpled, confusion twisting into something sharper, guilt long shadowed. He leaned forward, hands clenching. Mara, I was scared too. Dad's rage, it broke me. I thought staying quiet would keep us all from shattering more. His voice was harsh, truthful, slicing through the air like a confession long overdue. No smirk, no evasion, just the stark admission hanging there, making the wound tangible, bleeding into the space between them. The tape recorder whirred faintly, its recording fading to a soft hiss, capturing the fracture, the silence cracking under the weight of named pain. Mara's shoulders sagged, words tumbling out now in a rush of verbal relief, the anxiety ebbing like a tide pulled back. I was so afraid this would end us, she whispered, stepping closer, her younger self listening at last, acknowledged, but holding it in. It was killing me. Leo rose, hesitant, his eyes wet with the guilt he'd carried alone. I hear you now. God, Mara, I've always heard the echo, but I was too damn afraid to face it. Their hands brushed, tentative, the room's tension uncoiling into something fragile, healing. Yet as the recorder clicked off, its dying hum lingering, the air hummed with an unspoken question. How much pain could these spoken words truly endure before they mended or broke what remained? In the days that followed, during another tense gathering, the shards of the family portrait lay scattered between them on the worn living room rug, like brittle memories refusing to stay buried. Mara sat cross-legged, her fingers hovering over a jagged piece of glass that caught the dim lamplight, reflecting a fractured smile from their childhood selves. Her heart hammered, anxiety coiling tight in her chest. Every word felt like a step toward the edge. Leo, opposite her, on the edge of the couch, mirrored her tension, his broad shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the floor, as if the weight of decades pressed him down. I can't keep pretending, Mara said, her voice a thin thread, trembling at the seams. She picked up the shard, turning it slowly. It pricked her thumb, a tiny bead of blood blooming. You were supposed to protect me, Leo. Back then, when everything fell apart, you just walked away, left me with the silence. The words hung heavy, raw, her breath catching as fear clawed up. Would this shatter them for good? Leo's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists on his knees. He met her gaze, finally, the stoic mask cracking. I know, he murmured, voice rough like gravel. I was scared, Mara. Scared of what admitting it would do to us. To Mom. I thought staying quiet kept us whole. He reached out, not touching the glass, but gesturing toward it, their younger faces, now splintered, staring back accusingly. But it didn't. It just cut deeper. The air thickened with their shared unease, breaths sinking in ragged rhythm. Mara felt the anxiety peak, a storm in her ribs. But as Leo's admission landed, something shifted, a fragile thaw. She set the shard down, her hand shaking less now. I blamed you for so long, she confessed, sincerity bleeding through the fear. But I hid too, wanted to be heard, not shielded. Maybe we both did this. He nodded, slow, vulnerability etching lines on his face. Yeah, my fault as much as yours. I should have pulled you close instead of pushing away. The grievances spilled then, named at last, his guilt over the fights, her resentment for the abandonment. Each truth, a bridge beam over the chasm. Tension eased, not gone, but softening into a trembling relief that made her shoulders drop, his posture unfold. As the shards glinted between them, untouched yet transformed, Mara wondered if this honesty could wrap them like a balm, mending what silence had torn, or if it would slice anew. Finally, one quiet afternoon, the living room hung heavy with the scent of cooling tea, steam long dissipated from mugs, gripped like lifelines. Mara sat on the edge of the worn couch, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, heart still pounding from the words they'd finally unleashed. Decades of rot spilled out in the dim afternoon light. Leo mirrored her across the coffee table, his broad shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the floorboards as if they might swallow the silence threatening to reclaim them. "I don't want to stop now," Mara said, voice a fragile thread, laced with the anxiety that clawed at her chest. What if this was it? One honest gash, and the old quiet would stitch itself back, tighter than before. She glanced at the tape recorder between them, its muted form a relic from her solitary confessions, now mocking their fragile pact. Her hand hovered, trembling. Press play, or let the hush win? Leo lifted his gaze, shadows etching lines deeper into his face. "Me neither, but it's like pulling teeth. Every word hurts." His admission hung there, raw, pulling the air taut. He leaned forward, not touching the device, but his nod urged her on. "I stayed silent before because I thought it kept us whole. Illusion, all of it. Kept the peace by pretending the cracks weren't there." The room pulsed with that internal storm, Mara's pulse racing against the fear of relapse, the pull to retreat into numbness. She swallowed, throat dry, and flicked the recorder's switch. A soft whir broke the stillness, red light blinking like a hesitant heartbeat. "Okay," she whispered, more to herself. "Today, I still feel the anger sometimes. Not all gone, but saying it, out loud, it's not just pain, it's air." Leo's breath caught, but he didn't look away. "Yeah, and I see now how my quiet made it worse. For you, for me." His words came halting, each one a step across the chasm, softening the distance between them. The anxiety ebbed, not vanished, but yielding to a cautious relief, a shared exhale as the tape captured their stumbles, turning vulnerability into momentum. They sat there, the recorder humming softly, words trickling out in fits and starts. But in the pauses, the unspoken question lingered. When the next truth stung, would they reach for it again, or let silence creep back in?